Good evening, everybody. Welcome to night 3 of College Information Week. I think hopefully you've enjoyed some great seminars so far. We're going to continue for tonight and tomorrow. Tonight, my topic is the campus visit and in interviews, and I want to share some thoughts with you about maximizing those opportunities as you go begin your college visits. For those of you I haven't had a chance to meet yet, my name is John Young. I'm one of the college counselors here. And this presentation is going to come more from my background, having been a college admissions officer for the better part of 30 years. I spent a lot of time working with students to make their college visits effective. And I certainly spent a lot of time on the college side trying to present opportunities for students and families to get to know college campuses better. Let's go over an agenda. I'll share my screen. I have a PowerPoint to use for this presentation. And hopefully you can all see that now. So we're going to be talking about campus visits and interviews. And I think as a simple agenda, we're going to talk about the campus visit in 4 ways. Planning your visit before you get to campus, during your visit on campus, and what you do to close after your visit. And then when we're talking about interviews, we're going to talk about why colleges ask for interviews, how you prepare, some good advice, and some sample questions that people ask during interviews. All right. I think as we get going here, to talk about planning your visit, there's a lot of times that people want to maximize their trips and visit as many possible schools in one shot. But my recommendation is that you do no more than 2 in a day. There's a famous story of a family who went to visit 3 schools in Maine all in one day. And they went from one to the other, and the student came home after those 3 visits and had fallen in love with one of the colleges and decided to apply early decision. And luckily the student and everything was great. And when they arrived, family drove up to school that fall. Student had been napping most of the trip, and they get to campus, and he gets out of the car and says, "Why are we at this campus?" And mom and dad said, "This is where you applied early decision." And the student said, "No, it's not. I thought I applied to the other school early decision." He had gotten them confused because they had visited too many schools in one day. So I think 2 in a day is the most that you should plan on, and it gives you enough time to have meals and relax in between visits. Make some expectations for travel and how you want to plan your trips as a family. When I went through the college search process with my own son and daughter, we actually had a lot of fun traveling around, and I think some of that was because we planned some fun in between visits, whether that was in my son's case stopping in an amusement park, whether in my daughter's case going to one of her favorite stores in a museum, to try to maximize these trips, but yet save time for your family to have some fun and enjoy them. Have conversations about who's going to be driving and who's going to use the radio, because we had a lot of time in the car, and radio control seemed to be a big deal. But I think the most important thing you can do is plan ahead and call ahead. Most schools, you can go to their websites now and book your visits right online. You don't have to even pick up the phone to do that. But I'm a big fan of actually calling ahead, just to make sure that that day you planned your visit online is a day when students are there. It's not a day when everyone's on break. It's not a day when they have something going on, so that you're not going to get a real feel for what campus is like. But find out what it is that the college wants you to do while you're there. Is it an information session? Is it a tour, or both? Do they want you to sit in on a class? Do they want you to meet with a student or a faculty member or staff member? Make sure you find out what it is they want you to do while you're there and plan for that. That could take anywhere from an hour to 3 hours. So you need to spend that time on that campus. But also leave time for what you want to do. Do you want to eat in the dining hall? Do you want to hang out in the student center? Do you want to head to the bookstore so you can pick up that sweatshirt? Is now the time that you'd like to meet with a coach? Don't expect that you're going to show up on campus and be able to do that. You need to plan ahead, because invariably the day you're visiting campus is the day the coach is out recruiting. But if you had called ahead, you'd realize if you visited tomorrow, you could have had that sit-down meeting with the coach. What do you wear? You can see in this picture here that I put on the slide, you see the whole range of outfits that students are wearing. I think the key is for you to be comfortable. College admissions officers understand that you're going to be walking around campus. It could be the summertime when it's hot. Dress comfortably, but dress in a way that's a little bit to the nicer end of your wardrobe, students. You don't have to be in a jacket and tie like you are at school every day, but I don't know that a t-shirt is this is the right time for that. Parents, this is an important message for you. Resist the temptation to wear your alma mater sweatshirt when you're visiting the schools that your son or daughter is most interested in. When should you start visiting? Most students will start visiting in the spring of their junior year, but most definitely in the summer. Think about our spring break time to plan some visits, but certainly over the summer. Spring visits tend to work well because school's in session and you can see school while it's running, a typical day walking around campus. But summer is usually a little quieter, but they understand that this is probably the easiest time for you to visit campuses in the summer. Many colleges will also offer open houses where they'll roll out the red carpet. You can take a tour, hear from faculty, staff, and students with a crowd of others. So which is better, an open house or an individual visit? That's up to you. I think an open house, you can be a little more passive and follow the crowd, but learn a ton from all the sessions that are going on. Individual visits will be more personal with a greater chance to engage and get your specific questions answered. So know what's best for you, know what's going to work well for you and your family, and plan accordingly. All right, what do you do before your visit? Make sure you arrive in plenty of time ahead of the session. I'm one who says 15 minutes ahead of time is a good plan. Colleges are notorious for having challenging parking and lots that are far away from the admissions office so that you have to find your way there. When you get there, there's usually a form you need to fill out, letting the college know that you arrived, and they want to record that to show your interest. You might want to use the restroom, catch your breath, have a cup of coffee or glass of water. Make sure you've eaten something before you get to campus. You'll get to campus and things will start moving, and before you know it, it's 3 hours later and you haven't had a chance to eat anything. So make sure you do that. There's nothing worse than a grumbling stomach the whole way through an information session and a tour. You want to be comfortable. Make sure you have a list of questions ready for the tour guide. You're about to pay, in many cases, $80,000 a year now. And if you don't have any questions, people are going to be kind of surprised. You're going to be going away from home. You're going to be living on this campus. You should have some questions about what you want to get out of a college experience. And think about who and what do you want to see. That's part of the planning ahead, making sure that you've arranged time, if you wanted to meet with the coach, that you've got time to do that. When you arrive on campus, you've got your tour and information session. You want to make sure that those end in plenty of time for you to go ahead and meet your coach. All right, during the visit, you all have cell phones now. They all have cameras in them. Take pictures, use them, record the visit as best you can. I'm not a fan of holding the phone up and recording the entire tour, but take some pictures of some key spots on campus, some things you thought were interesting. Get business cards or contact information for the people that you meet. Try to agree ahead of time on what questions you're going to ask and who's going to ask them. Is it mom? Is it dad? Parents, you should have a chance to ask those questions for your son, but obviously have sons take the lead when it comes to this. When you show up on campus and you head to the front desk to check in, it's your son who should be checking in, not the parents. Parents have a big role in this process, but your son should be front and center when all of this happens. Make sure you leave that time, as I mentioned, in planning to take a look around on your own. After you've done what the school wants you to do in terms of the information session and the campus tour, make sure you've left time for you to go hang out in that student center, pick up a copy of the student newspaper, just look at the posters on the wall and the expressions on students' faces. I think that gives you a really good indication. And what you're trying to do is learn things about school that you can't find out in a brochure or on the website, to get that feel for campus. And sometimes spending a little time in dropping on conversations is exactly what you need to get that sense of campus and whether you can see yourself fitting in. So make sure you leave yourself a little time after the tour and the information session, whatever it is the school wants you to do, for you to hunt around and see those spaces on campus that you really enjoyed. If there's a place on campus that wasn't covered on the tour, but it's really important to you, make sure you ask in the admissions office if you could go see a science lab, even though that wasn't covered on the tour, or you want to go see some art buildings because that's really important to you. Ask at the front desk. They'll usually give you directions there so you can see that. And if you just walk in the door of one of those buildings and start walking around, I wouldn't be surprised if a student or a faculty member came up to you and offered to show you around to see the space in more detail. But don't leave campus without having seen what you want to see to get most of your questions answered. I think you should take the time to make sure you check in at the front desk. I'm amazed at the number of times students have arranged a visit and they come in flying in just before the information starts and they never check in at the front desk. One of the things that colleges increasingly are using in their decision-making process is something called demonstrated interest. Does the student know our school well? Have they demonstrated interest in our institution? Because if they have, they're more likely to enroll if they're admitted. And a campus visit is the best way to show that interest. So make sure you get credit for it by checking in at the front desk and doing what they want you to do. All right, after the visit, immediately when you're finished, I'm a big fan of not leaving campus, sit in the car, do whatever you need to do, and write down the 3 things you loved about campus and the 3 things you didn't like so much. I bet you'll see some common themes as you visit places, that you liked the English department at one school and you didn't like the English department at another. You liked the food at one place, you didn't like the food at another. All of a sudden, you're finding out some factors that are really important to you and can help shape how you form your list from here on out. You're finding out that the English department is really important to you. Well, you can go back to Mr. Griffa or me and say, hey, I visited a couple of schools and I've really found that the English department is important. Can you give me some schools like the ones that I liked that have great English programs? And that's easier for us to do. I think it's always better to evaluate your visit, leave those notes right when it's fresh in your mind. It helps you to build a consistent list. Please write a thank you note to whoever you met with. If you had an individual meeting with a counselor or you really connected with that tour guide, make sure you write a thank you note. Most schools will keep them. They'll make them a part of your file so that when, if and when you eventually apply, I think it really makes a difference. It makes you stand out among a sea of applicants to show that you took the time to thank people for showing you around. I'm also a fan for putting it on the shelf for a day or two, even a week. I think you tend to leave a campus and you fall in love with it and you think it's the best place ever. A week later, it still should be the best place ever. Sometimes students get so smitten with their visit that they're ready to apply early decision on the spot, and they haven't even visited some other schools yet. Take some time to slow down, make those visits count for yourself. The campus visit can be the single most important factor in students' decision-making about whether to attend a school. So you want to give it the time that it's due. You want to give it all of its proper power, yet at the same time, you need to be slightly objective and not make decisions in a rash way right after you've visited the space. All right, there's your campus visit. Let's talk a little bit about interviews. I've got a checklist here that you might want to take a look at. And here are things that you can do while you're on campus. You can gather information by the information session, an interview with an admissions officer, pick up financial aid information for families. That might be something you want to plan for and arrange a special meeting with a financial aid officer. You can sit in on a class, get those business cards that I mentioned, and then you explore campus. You take a tour, you talk to current students, check out the dorms. Maybe you want to do an overnight visit. If the school is really high on your list and you're trying to decide between that and one other, some schools will give you the chance to spend the night, eat in the dining hall, hang out in the student center, talk with coaches. Leave yourself some time to drive around the community. You're not just going to school, you're moving potentially to a new town, and you might want to see what that's like so you can get a sense of what your social life might be like. Please plan time. And as I mentioned, no more than 2 schools in a day. The reason I've got a really important story for that, when I used to work at Colgate University, we would do campus visits all the time. We were located in Hamilton, New York. That's the name of the town that Colgate is in. And somehow people thought that Hamilton College was in the same town, and it's about a 35-minute drive away. You should see the number of times people were peeling out of the parking lot at breakneck speed, trying to make their visit from one school to the other, thinking they were in the same town. They are not. So planning ahead makes a big difference. All right, I want to spend some time talking about interviews. And now I think fewer and fewer schools are requiring interviews as part of the college admissions process, but the ones who do, they are very important. If a school highly recommends an interview, let me encourage you to take advantage of that opportunity. It's a chance for you to separate yourself from some of your peers. Um, I think they usually take one of two forms. They're either evaluative, where information, conversations, things that were shared, impressions that counselors make of you in the interview make their way into your admissions application. They will be part of the determining factor about whether you get in or not. And the other form of interviews are purely informational. They're informative interviews. No notes are taken, nothing gets put in your file about what was said in the interview, but it's a chance for you to get questions answered, a chance for you to learn more about the school and get your specific interests addressed by a member of the admissions team. So find out when you're scheduling an interview whether it's evaluative or just informational. Who conducts these interviews? Well, if you're visiting campus, it's more than likely a member of the staff or an intern in the office, someone who's trained to give interviews. It could be a senior who's gone through some training. At both schools that I worked at, two of the three schools I worked at, we would use senior interns to conduct some interviews, and they were well trained. And I can assure you that those interviews counted as much as one that was led by a staff. A lot of schools use alumni to do their interviews, and they can do them local to you. They'll give you a chance to connect with somebody who went to school there, and they'll ask some great questions, do a write-up just like you would if you were on campus. More and more colleges now are also offering interviews when they're traveling to your area in the fall. So I was this fall when one of the schools came through McQuaid. We were chatting, asking about what their plans were for the evening. They had 6 interviews booked after they were done visiting McQuaid. So keep your eyes peeled for those announcements. If it's a school that you're interested in and they send you an email letting you know that they're offering interviews at a local Starbucks or the hotel lobby that they're staying in, there's an opportunity for you to get an interview without having to go all the way back out to campus again. As I mentioned, fewer and fewer schools are holding interviews now, but pay attention to those recommendations that they give you. All right. How do you prepare? I think it is vital that you do some self-reflection. Think about your high school experience. What is it that you've liked? What is it that you've been more challenged by in high school? What are you thinking about in terms of college? Why are you visiting this school? What do you hope to get out of your college experience? What are you more nervous about? I think it's an opportunity because you'll find that all the questions that are asked of you have the word you in them. They're trying to get to know you better as a student. I also think it's worth you thinking about, what do you want the interviewer to know about you? Are there parts of your experience in high school that you think need some further explanation that you can talk about? Or are there certain qualities you want to impress upon that interviewer? Think about that ahead of time. What should you bring? Some schools will ask you to bring a transcript because they'll want to evaluate your academic preparedness for the school and have a quick conversation with you about it. Most schools, that's not the case. Some students might bring a resume if there's some things they want to leave behind with an admissions officer. Some schools won't collect that or make that part of the file, but others will. So feel free to do that. But I think you should bring a list of questions. Most interviews, there's going to be a really important section in the interview that leaves time for Q&A. Let me talk a little bit about how an interview typically goes. Usually the interviewer will come and meet you in the admissions lobby, introduce themselves to you and your parents, and then take you off to their office to have a meeting. Parents, this is one of those times where you sit in the waiting room, and this is time for the student to shine on their own. There's usually a good part of the interview that's what I call information gathering. They're going to be asking you questions about your high school experience, about things you want to get out of college. And then there's going to be information sharing. When you indicate to them that you want to be a pre-med major, they can really spend some time talking about their pre-med program. They can sell the school to you a little bit, give them that opportunity to help maximize the fit. You're trying to see whether this school is a good fit for you, so is the school. And when you talk about things that are important to you, they can answer and give you that great information about whether this is a good fit for you. It's okay to be nervous. A lot of students, when they do an interview, especially for the first time, are nervous. And you can tell your interviewer that. That's okay. They'll ask you some softer questions and get you comfortable before they ask some of the tough stuff. Students and parents, I think it's important for you to decide who's going to ask about what before you get to campus. So, for example, if Johnny really cares about the English department, let him ask about that because that's an important thing for him to know. But as a parent, if you're really concerned about financial aid or campus safety, you're the right person to ask that question. After the interview is concluded, typically the interviewer will bring the student back and ask mom and dad if they have any questions. And there's your opportunity to ask. They really mean that. They want to get to know you better. All right. What's my advice for interviewers? I think sometimes people who have big personalities think that they're the right people to do interviews, and they can be, but be cognizant of you running on and going way deeper than the question that was asked. In admissions world, we used to call this the runaway train, where we'd ask a simple question, tell me how your senior year is going, and 10 minutes later, the student is still talking. You want to answer that question, but answer it thoughtfully, succinctly, and give them something to hang on to. But don't go so long that there's not going to be opportunities to ask other questions. I think sometimes introverts think that they shouldn't interview because they might be on the shyer side or more reluctant. I can tell you without the fear of contradiction, some of the best interviews I ever had would be from students who were introverted. They might take a little more time to think about the response to questions, but their responses are very thoughtful. So just because you're introverted doesn't mean that you shouldn't be having an interview. But I think the key part is knowing yourself. As I mentioned, every question that's asked has the word you in it. So reflect on your high school experience. You'll see in the sample questions, they all require a certain amount of self-knowledge of things that are really unique to you. Parents, as I mentioned, this is the time for your son or daughter to shine. You don't need to do the bragging for them. But students, do get a little comfortable bragging about yourself. We're asking for that. When a member of the admissions team asks you about the activities that you've been involved in high school, this is your chance to go through those. Not only talk about what you've chosen to take part in, but why it's important to you, what you've gotten out of the experience, which ones are the most important and which ones you could live without. They're going to ask all of those types of questions. So don't be shy about blaring the trumpets about the things that you have accomplished. But parents, you have a role to play here. It's just at the beginning and the end, not during the middle. Let me give you a sense of some of the questions that we would typically ask. My very first question to every student I would interview would be, tell me about your high school. I don't know it as well as you do. And that always helps me to get to know high schools better and understand them. How do they ask that question? Sometimes it's as simple as hey, I've only visited McQuaid Jesuit once. Give me a sense of what your favorite part of your high school is. Or if you were principal for a day, what would you change about the school if you could? Lots of different questions because you know this school much better than the admissions officer does. Think simply. There are some really nice factors about McQuaid that aren't similar to other schools. So if you can point out some of the things that you find here that you know are different than the local public school that you could have gone to, it's well worth pointing out. We have some amazing traditions at McQuaid. We've got some amazing people here. You can highlight any of those when you're asked this question. A very typical question is, why are you interested in my college? What is it that makes you want to visit this school today? That's where you need to have done your basic level of research and make sure they have what you're looking for. I remember having a great conversation with a young man who was visiting Hobart and William Smith. The interview was terrific. We really, I got to know him. He was really an impressive young man, had a lot of great academic qualities and a lot of great personal qualities. But I remember asking him, why are you interested in Hobart and William Smith? And his answer was that he was interested in Hobart and William Smith because of the wrestling program. He was a big wrestler in high school and knew that that really helped him stay disciplined, that having that wrestling experience as part of his college experience would help him stay focused in the classroom, that his coach in high school was one of the most important mentors that he had. He was looking for the same thing in a mentor in the wrestling coach at Hobart and William Smith. The major problem there is that Hobart William Smith does not have a wrestling program. And if the student had done some basic research, they would have known that, would have saved himself a visit, would have saved me time. Great student, terrific young man, really bad match for the institution. So be prepared to answer that question. Why are you interested in my college? And have done some basic level research about the school to make sure they understand, here's why I think it might be a good fit for me. I hope you'll find the same thing. A little bit more challenging question for students to answer is, what are you most proud of? Talk about something in high school or an experience outside of high school that you're really proud of. It could be a course that you took where you started off not performing that well, but you really redoubled your efforts, spent some time with the teacher during flex period, and you improved your grade over the course of the year. That could be something to be really proud of. It could be a co-curricular accomplishment, something that one of your teams achieved while you were here. But think about some things that you would want to highlight if somebody asked, what are you most proud of? The same way, they might ask the opposite of that. What would you change about your high school experience? If you had to do it all over again, what would you do differently? Are there things that you would change about the academic experience that you have? Are there things you would change co-curricularly? This is an opportunity for you to address anything on your academic record or on your co-curricular record that you think is worthy of further explanation. Yes, I would have changed that grade I got in biology in ninth grade. And here's why. I didn't work as hard as I should have, or I didn't take advantage of the opportunity to spend time with the teacher outside of class. I wish I had spent more time doing that because then the grade would have improved. I learned that as a sophomore. Anything like that is important. Don't be afraid to talk about something negative during your interview. It makes you seem honest. It makes you forthright and earnest. And those are all qualities that admissions officers are looking for in their students. So you can see in these questions, there's the word you or your in every single one of them. So it is all about you when it comes to this interview. And I think you need to be prepared to talk about yourself. It's not something you do very often. We don't ask you to do that all the time. We ask you to talk about things in English class and history class and not about yourself. And that's exactly what goes on in an interview. Some people decide that they're going to go visit their first choice school first and do an interview there first. I highly recommend against that. Go visit a school that's not so high on your list first. Get your sea legs. Do an interview at that school if you can. Get comfortable and understand how that format's going to go before you visit your top choice school. You want some experience under your belt before you go and do all this. Interviews and the campus visit are so important to this process. You want to make sure you're comfortable doing them and you've gotten a good sense of that. You are blessed to be located where we are, to have the range of schools right in our backyard that you can go visit in an hour's drive is really quite impressive. For those of you who don't know where to start with this process, one of the best things to do is arrange a visit. You can go visit a large urban research institution right here, but you can go just down the road and visit a small liberal arts college. You can drive 45 minutes and go see something more rural. There's opportunities to visit tons of different types of institutions within an easy drive of the McQuaid area. So I'm a big fan, if you're uncertain of what to be doing, to just plan a visit, get in the car with your family, and go take advantage of that campus tour and information session. It will help you get comfortable with this. You will realize some things that you like and you don't. Start taking those notes down, and it can really inform your process as you move forward. I hope you found this helpful. I hope you'll stick around for the other presentations this evening. It's been my pleasure to present on this topic, and I hope you get a lot out of the College Information Week that we're putting together. Thank you.